What's going on? I'm Scott from Koenig. Welcome to another episode of the Behind the Wheel podcast. You know, we do this whole thing every Wednesday. What's going on? How are you?
How you doing, Scott?
That was the most awkward thing ever. You know, like usual, we seem to be having our fair share of technical difficulties, but I guess that wouldn't be the podcast if we didn't. Real quick, before we get into our guest, I want to say that this Friday we're going to have another piece of content coming out, so make sure you stay onto our YouTube channel, Koenig Wheels USA, and if you are coming over from Instagram or Facebook Live, thank you. Welcome. So, before we... No,
Well,
let's just go into it.
okay.
Listen, the person that we're going to be bringing in just a moment is someone that if you are into autocrossing, road racing, especially in the Mid-Atlantic region, you know him. Chris COBETTO has been the director, and we'll get into more of that stuff, of NASA Mid-Atlantic for, oh man, it's a long time. But Chris, probably, well, I would guess about 21 years. Well, we're going to let him talk. But anyhow, with that said, you know, Chris is also the director and the owner of HyperFEST. And I think that is such a cool thing, and that's the story we want to talk about. So without further ado, someone who needs no introduction because I'll probably mess it up, Chris COBETTO. Welcome.
Hey, what's up, gentlemen? Thank you for having me on. It's great to be here.
Yeah, well, whether it is or it isn't, you're here now, so, you know.
Well, I can't get out. That's right.
Right. You're stuck in the Zoom realm.
That's right.
So, 21 years you've been doing Mid-Atlantic.
That's right. Yep.
How does that start? Because 21 years ago, the NASA scene was drastically different, if you want to go to non-existent, and autocrossing and road racing was not something that was super organized to the average enthusiast.
Yeah, I mean, it was still pretty much old school at that time. You know, there was pretty much the SCCA. There were a couple of the car clubs that did track days, like BMW Club and Porsche Club, that sort of thing. NASA really started in California, and at that time, the National Autosport Association was pretty much in California. So the way that it started is I was racing an e-production car with the SCCA, and as myself and my crew were working on the car, and I was complaining about my real job at the time, they said, "Well, geez, you ought to be the director of NASA Virginia," which it was NASA Virginia at the time. And I said, "What the heck is NASA Virginia?" And we kind of went through that, and I said, "Well, that's actually really interesting." And I went that season. I started. I'd started racing actually in e-production, and I just read this thing about NASA that hey, you could win money by racing, and it was kind of contingencies and cash, but for the amateur level driver, because at that time, and still now, it's even worse now. The pro stuff was so expensive. I knew I was just never going to get there. And so it was really nice because at the SCCA, my first win ever, I remember there's no trophy ceremony. There was nothing. You went through impound, you went over. There was a woman sitting in a chair under an awning. And I remember the first win. I walked over there, and really I floated over there because all I'd ever want to do all my life was race. And so I'd won my first race ever, and I was just like, I won. And she kind of grunted at a box that was on the ground and said, "Sign here." And I literally, that's how I got my first trophy for my first win ever. And I remember thinking at that time, man, I've worked so hard. It's so expensive. And it was sort of disappointed, really. I mean, it was very anticlimactic. And so when that conversation came about with my crew, and they said, you could do NASA, and I looked into it, NASA was like, yeah, here you go, have the Virginia region, and we became the foothold. Now, mind you, I'll tell you, I'll be after being in here 21 years and doing this for as long as I've done it. I will admit that when I decided to start a sanctioning body or start the region, I had no clue what I was doing. Gentleman friend John Felton and I started it kind of at the same time, and I remember thinking to myself, this is really cool. But then we were on the front porch after working on the car one day, and there was there was an empty box of Papa John's and an almost empty 12-pack of Warsteiner. And we said, we got to run a race series next year. Yeah, so in 2000, we got fortunate that VIR was actually back on the map after being a ghost track since 1974.
Right.
And went down there, and it was this beautiful 3.27-mile black ribbon in southern central Virginia. It was just gorgeous. And we got lucky because I walked in and they gave me 4 dates right away. They had no idea who I was. They didn't know that I didn't really know what I was doing. And Summit Point gave us 2. And so I went from a, pizza and a beer to 6 dates at road courses and the very first season. And the reality is that I had never worked a specialty. I never worked timing and scoring. I never worked control. I'd never worked tech. I'd been a driver up to that point, really. And so I had no idea what I was doing. Funny story is I was at VIR. This is a couple of months before it opened up, maybe about 5 months or so. And I'm going around the track with the track manager. His name's Mike Rand, who had come from Lime Rock. Super, super nice guy. And then we're just riding around the track, and he's asking me real basic questions like, "Hey, we're gonna get your corner workers." I'm like, I don't know. And he's like, "What are you doing about tech?" I'm like, I don't know. So that's how it sort of started out. And that one conversation kind of gave me the list of things that I didn't know and that I needed to know and I needed to get a hold of. And we just started. And the reality is we had a great team, an enthusiastic team, and I wanted to put events on that I wanted to go to.
Yeah.
I wanted to make it a big deal for the amateur racer who had dreams from being a kid of, the champagne and the trophy presenters and that sort of thing. And so that's what we did. We started we started it, and we made a party on Saturday night. And I get up there. I still do it. It's been 21 years. I get up on the bullhorn or on the PA system, and I say, and in first place it's Scott Weiss, and make a big deal out of the drivers, because I think they deserve it. I think we all deserve it, and it's kind of fun. And most of us will never really hit the pro side.
It's so interesting because we know that some of the best things seem to come out of passion, determination, and timing. And I think that timing element is really important because 21 years ago, like you said, NASA was in California, but today, if you were going to start some sort of sanctioning region or some different series, there's a lot of red tape that you have to go through directly with NASA to make that happen. So the fact that you were so wide open to be able to come in there and kind of figure things out, I mean, I can't imagine today NASA, being overseeing some of these race series or regions, not having all the stuff mapped out for them and handing it to them like, you got to do this stuff.
Well, there's no question about it that now it's probably easier. Now, when I say easier, running a sanctioning body or running a region is not easy, right?
Not easy.
Even if you have it mapped out for you, but it's I don't know, it's different. The nice thing about it was the Wild Wild West, and my personality sort of lends itself to that. I like to make stuff up as I go along, and that really helped out at the beginning. and by making stuff up, as we went along, and I say but the reality is our team, at that time we'd have a meeting every November, and we'd have huge box of big crab legs and big thick steaks and maybe a beer or two, and we would all sit around and we would figure out what to do better for the next season. And a lot of the ideas actually that NASA National uses, and a lot of the things that have become commonplace really within the industry, originated at that table with those thick steaks and that group of people. And I'd love to say it was just me, but it's not. I mean, we had wonderful people at that time. So,
and I wanted to ask this question because one of the things that when I talk to Scott, he gets very nostalgic about his time. I just wanted to ask you, the way that the motorsport world is now, do you think it was better then when you first started, or do you like kind of connect with the way that is that the reason why you started HyperFest or got in, starting with HyperFest? Or basically what I'm trying to say is like, do you prefer how it was back then to how it is now?
Do I prefer how it was back then to how it is now? I think for me personally, because this is a business, and we do, and we exist with a lot of clubs. Everybody with a set of flags and a dually thinks they're a sanctioning body or think that they can put on track day events. And so what has happened in the industry is you have people who really do know what they're doing, really understand organization, really understand the safety aspects, and the small details that it takes to make sure that people are safe on track. And so there are a lot of organizations, some of them very high profile, who really just do not have that organization. And so from that perspective, I think that there are a lot more organizations out there putting events on. So it's great that they're introducing people to the track. That is a good thing for everybody. Unfortunately, I think that's, and you got to be careful, because back then, for the most part, everybody was serious and everybody really knew what they were doing. As a matter of fact, we were the new kids on the block, and a lot of the clubs that were out there, they were just, oh my goodness, you're going to do track day, HPDE, and racing all in the same weekend. And we were going to, it was going to be a bloodbath. Literally, I had people from a variety of clubs I won't name out there saying, hey, it'll be a bloodbath. These kids don't know what they're doing. And of course, it didn't turn out to be that. It was just a better environment for everybody to learn how to drive. But do I like it better? It's great that the market is big. It is what I envisioned to a certain extent when I first started out. And way back when forums were a big deal, I remember being on this forum in probably 2000, maybe late 99. And there was somebody who was from one of the established clubs and was complaining that NASA shouldn't be around because all it would do would split up, the sponsorship dollars and that sort of thing. And so his idea was that, hey, we're going to take a piece of the pie that's barely there. And my thing was this is a small pie. This needs to be much bigger. We can make road racing in general much bigger. We just need to introduce it to people. And at that time, the established organizations were just catering to their own crowd, and they weren't looking to the tuner crowd, which is what I was really looking for, and really that's why we started HyperFest. But I don't know, I like it better now in the fact that there are a lot more people who know what's going on. There are a lot more people that really get the track day stuff. I remember in 2000, I had a job in sales I was starting NASA, and part of my territory was the DC region. And I remember being at a gas station. I would do this regularly, and there'd be guys with the Hondas and the tuner guys, and I would ask them, hey, can you can actually you can put that car on a real racetrack? And they were like, no way, man, really? I'm like, yeah, like an hour west of here at a place called Summit Point, West Virginia. And so it has gone from that to I'll be dragging my race car around, my E30 with a big HyperFEST logo on the quarters, and I'll have those same age kids, and I call them kids, but they'll come up to me like, oh, that's so cool, you road race that car. And I would love to say that at least I had a little bit of a part in maybe making it more mainstream.
Yeah. No, I mean, it makes sense. I think the best part about NASA, and there's a fair amount of solid, organized, time attack, autocross type events now. But I think the thing about NASA as a whole is that it really is focused on teaching you how, and having almost a graduation level to be able to become a much more serious, dedicated racer, while giving you enough resources at these events that you can progress as a driver comfortably without spending a ton of money. And that's the difference between the average enthusiast getting out and enjoying a weekend but still driving home at the end of it, and getting there and you're surrounded by cars that you know you're completely out of your league.
There's no question about it that getting people started is really the thing, and getting them started easy and giving them a way to progress. The NASA ladder. I always say, I mean, we start with hyperdrives. We started with a thing at HyperFEST called hyperdrives, where it was too expensive for these tuner kids to bring a car to the track, because it might be $400. At that time maybe $300 to do this. So we said, you know what, $40, and the first hit of track is free, basically. And we wanted to get them on. We wanted to get them hooked. And once you're on track, I got you.
Yeah, no going back.
The sport has you. I mean, there's no question about it. You're coming back because you can't help yourself. If you have any inclination toward this, you do that, and then it just becomes you just immediately, once you start looking up the ladder and saying, all right, what's my next step in progression?
Yeah, it's interesting the progression that NASA as an organization has taken on in 21 years. Obviously, I know Ali Arsham, and we've had him on the podcast before, and to listen to kind of how they started getting going, I think everybody's beginning is somewhat similar to what you just described of just the Virginia region before it was Mid-Atlantic. So watching this agency kind of evolve, and guys like Ali choosing to stay in just his USTCC up in California, in that really far west area, it really shows you how much larger of an operation this has come, and how much you guys have contributed to what it is today.
I mean, I'd love to take, I take a little bit of credit about it, but really the guys, Ali and Jerry Kunzman, the Godfather, those guys are the ones that came up with the idea. Back then in California, if you didn't run with the BMW club or the Porsche club, they started as the Capri Club.
Right.
And what they and what they found out was, so what we all find out is that when you say, hey, we want to do a track day, what do you guys think? And they're like, yeah, we'll go do that. And then you say, okay, well, then you put on the event, and next thing you know, everybody's, well, I gotta, my mom's making me go take her to the doctor that day, and next thing you know, you're like, oh, we only have 8 Capris. And so, you open it up to everybody. And, Jerry Kunzman is just a phenomenally open-minded guy. And it was like, why should this just be for one mark? Whether you have a Z car, whether you have a BMW, whether you have a Fiero, you want to put it on track, let's go. Let's have some fun. And I'm very fortunate in the fact that that attitude is really, it still continues within NASA. And if you've ever been to HyperFEST, you know that it's that attitude, set on nitrous with a supercharger.
So you run NASA. Well, first off, HyperFEST, if I'm right now, 12 years?
HyperFEST is its 20th year.
20?
So next week will be 20.
Hold on, Chris. But all right. So you have had HyperFEST, but there was a moment, and I feel like it was like 10, 12 years ago, that HyperFEST really changed pace. It really took a whole different direction.
Well, I mean, in 2014, we moved it to Virginia International Raceway from Summit Point Raceway. And we pretty much did it because the event had outgrown that facility, and the market itself. When you've been to SEMA, man. I mean, I watched the podcast you have with regards to SEMA, and I remember in 2001, I'm pretty sure all it was clear taillights.
Yeah.
And fake exhausts, and it was very cool to see the progression from that to really more hardcore types of performance stuff, at least on the road racing side, and the road course sort of thing. So I think it's
well, and I get
it's cool now that we moved it, because it's good that we moved to VIR, because the VIR is so big. we have so much room for expansion there. So if that's what you're talking, I'm not sure if that's what you're
listen,
referring to.
I think that there, for me, and maybe this is a question that's difficult for you to answer because you've been in the thick of it for so long, that you've been behind every move that HyperFest has taken. But from me, as somebody who I guess is on the sponsor side / looking at it as an event, I really feel that it was 10 or 12 years ago that the event almost catapulted and really started picking up a lot of steam. You picked up a tremendous following, and this event today is a monster compared to what it was for a number of years.
I mean, it's definitely gotten bigger. There's no question about it. But I think again, it's I tell people all the time, we were 10 years ahead of our time. We started in 2002. Really, the idea was one that was born from a guy, you may know him. His name's Mike DeFord.
Right.
Mike and I are the one. He was working for
Bully Dog?
Carlisle.
Oh.
I'm sorry.
He worked for Bully Dog for a while.
He did. And this is way back, man. We're talking about going back to when he was working for Carlisle.
Okay.
He was a NASA guy from California. He was putting on the Street Compact show. He just said, "Hey man, you're NASA. We love NASA. NASA, why don't you come up and take a booth?" Like, great, let's do that. So he and I became friends, and we just came up with this idea that wouldn't it be cool if we did that compact kind of a show at a road course, and that's really the genesis of how HyperFest started. And then the first year we did one at Summit Point, and we did another one at Charlotte Motor Speedway. So even though this is our 20th year, this is I think it's the 25th HyperFest that we have done. Yeah, man, we did. I think it was 2003. We decided to do a tour. We did Pittsburgh, Charlotte, Summit Point, and SoCal. And the only date we could get in SoCal was one weekend after the weekend we had at Summit Point in July.
Great.
So so we loaded up on Sunday in Summit Point, 4 of us, Mike included, and drove my dually and my 42-foot trailer across the country. 7 trailer tires later, we arrived in Southern California.
Your event today has an extremely diverse, I guess, the amount of different types of motorsport that you can experience, and the fact that you've rolled it all into almost in a celebration of car people life one weekend. It's pretty unbelievable. I mean, you guys have done everything from the most serious events to events with hot power wheels, battery operated kids cars on track.
Well,
right.
And I wanted to mention the fact that, like, for me, when I think of HyperFest, I kind of like equate it to like in regular life, kind of like event that I want to go to, like a EDC or something. If I can kind of compare that in any capacity, because it kind of relates to the younger crowd a lot. You've done a very good job with the marketing of it. I'm a big fan, and I was actually telling Scott that I was very excited to kind of do this. That's why I'm sitting here. Usually Jared's on this seat. Yeah. But I was like, I got to see, because I want to know more about the event and how it came about. So, I just wanted to mention that. Throw that out there.
Well,
I think the event is really cool.
Well, I'm glad you dig it. I mean, I'm 12 really, emotionally, and and I have a gray beard, but I, maybe hit 13 every once in a while, and I just love cars. Even in the middle of doing all the craziness of planning for this event right now, I still can't help myself. I get a notification for Bring a Trailer in the morning, an email, and I'm like, oh, let's see what I can't buy today.
Right.
And so the passion is there, and I love stuff with motors. I love to drive and I love the youth. I have a 19-year-old son who's a phenomenal driver, and just crazy enthusiastic about this stuff. He has gotten all his friends to learn how to drive stick. None of them want an automatic at this point, and and he continues to bring people out there. So he's a disciple of the event and of the sport, but he genuinely loves this stuff, and he's introducing people in. And so, yeah, man, I love the youth. I mean, whatever they dig. I mean, I'm not necessarily going to know every artist that we play on the PA system, as far as the music goes, but I don't care as long as everybody's having fun and everybody gets along. I mean, we have the cool thing about, and it's my event, so of course I'm gonna think this is cool, but I mean, the cool thing about it is that you have anybody there who's a car enthusiast from 15 years old to 70 years old, and there's no animosity. We have drifters, and we have off-road people, and we have rally, and we have road race and time trial, and everybody gets along. The Jeep people, they come over and want to get rides in a race car. The race car guys, their buddies bring their Jeep along behind them, behind their trailer, and when they've got a chance, they go over and they run the off-road stuff at VIR. And so the one thing I definitely believe is a gearhead is a gearhead. You may have your particular discipline that you dig, but you're always casting an eye, to something else. If you're, I tend to like, European type sports cars, but a 1971 Buick Riviera boat tail, love it. I love stuff like that, jacked up Jeeps. So I think everybody's that way. And we try to make it as a mecca for everybody. And we like to have fun. We like to laugh at ourselves. The Coney Power Wheels Attack, the Coney and Redline help us with, that thing's hilarious.
Oh, it's
I mean,
hysterical.
it's
really good.
Well,
Was that like the original goal when you started the event, like to have multiple amounts of motorsports in one central event, or is that just what it developed to be?
Well, it really just started as what I really wanted to do is NASA was so new. I was just trying to put butts in seats for our regular NASA events. And so I talked to Mike, and I was like, well, maybe we can just get somebody to do a car show out in the outfield, and we'll do the NASA stuff. We can introduce people that come with the car show and that sort of thing, and maybe we'll get some osmosis. And that's just sort of how it started. Nobody wanted to do the car show, so we had to bring a car show person in. And then, of course, we started talking, Mike and I did. We're like, we should put people on track. How about this hyperdrive thing? That'd be cool. It's like, and then he showed me a tape with drifting, which in 2000, I had no clue what that was, honestly. He shows me this tape in Japanese, back when he still had VCRs. And I went, oh my gosh, we have to bring this. And that's where US Drift Nationals came from. We were the very first pro drift championship in the country. The guy who won it is somebody you might know by the name of Von Gittin Jr. And
I've heard of him.
yeah. And the guy who won next year was Chris Forsberg. So the people that have come through HyperFEST, it's kind of bonky. But anyway, it really didn't start out to be the craziness, but to Summit Point, they had dirt. So we're like, maybe we can do some rally type stuff over there. Maybe we can do some Jeep stuff over there. They had another track. So we're like, maybe we can do some hyperdrives over there, and we can do drifting here, and we have road racing. And so it just, like anything else, it had this evolution. And we're always trying to add content to it. It's not like I started out and said, all right, I want to create a mecca for every gearhead out there. I wish I could say that, but it just sort of evolved into that. And to be perfectly honest with you, I didn't even know what we had. I really didn't know. It was just like, that sounds like fun. Let's do it. Hey, that sounds like fun. Let's do it. And it probably took 10 years before I went, it's kind of like a automotive amusement park.
Right.
And that's where it sort of started out. Although I have to say, we may change that, because I think playground is I'm thinking about it. Playground, I think, somehow works better, because we want amusement parks are maybe a little too structured. Playgrounds, you can have a little more fun in a playground.
Yeah, I guess. Playground makes me feel a little naughty when I think about it. So I'm not sure, but we're gonna have to. we can continue that debate off camera. I I like events as a car person, and you've known because we've been friends for years, so we've had plenty of these conversations before. I'm really big, and I believe that part of the cool thing that we get to do with Koenig is we get to help support some of the up and coming drivers, grassroots programs, whatever it may be. But I think the best part about that is the fact that I know and we know that by stimulating these programs, it is what continues to propel that kind of forward movement of expanding that enthusiast base. It's really important to allow people a gateway into something that they don't know, or else they're always an outsider. And HyperFest is such a good event for that because you're bringing people in from the area, and when I say area, now it's probably all over the eastern seaboard for the most part, but you're bringing people in that are just car enthusiasts that are coming to watch something cool, coming to participate sometimes for the first time, and they're getting a look at almost everything. It's almost like a little tasting for everything motorsport. They can decide what attracts them to this side of the coin.
Well, I just want to say that this year marks the official fact that HyperFest is now international.
Yeah.
We have one person coming from London. We have one person coming from London. We sold one ticket to a guy in London. And so we are international, baby. But yeah, I mean, it's just, it's a smorgasbord,
Yeah.
I mean, you just want to go do everything. And yeah, we want to introduce people to it. And the thing is, we really want to introduce people to, from our perspective, on the road racing side, right? I mean, the Power Wheels downhill thing is hilarious. We'll have 50 people compete in that as part of like the 50 challenge. And then we have a wait list for that. And we'll have this year, by the time we go, and everybody that wants to do it gets to do it. So even if you don't get in the championship races, which we limit to 50, you can still get at least one shot down the hill with the all race. And that's where you put 7,500. I don't care how many ever people end up signing up for this. And that's to me, that's sort of the real fun. But you got to give people have to have a reason to laugh and smile and forget about a lot of the stuff that's happening in their normal weekly lives. Right. And, that's my goal, right? To run this, to be the guy that is the bad uncle that introduces you to, having a little nip of wine. You know what I mean? Not bad uncle, but the fun uncle,
Listen,
and that's
just
kind of,
don't bring the bad uncle to the playground.
That's right.
Then we are in
That's
a
right.
whole
So-
bunch of trouble.
Well, you just you want to have people have fun, and the thing is, we have great. There's so many people that go into putting this thing on, but yeah, if we can introduce one person, and the reality is that, like you talked about, you guys help the sport and you help the industry by providing like the NASA relationship, right, and things like that. The hyperdrive does that. The hyperdrive, we have several national champions that their first track event ever was a hyperdrive at HyperFest. Guy down in Charlotte, Kevin Helms, won the national championship in Honda Challenge 1, and his first event ever was that 2000, our first event at Charlotte. He came out and he goes, "This is where I'm supposed to be." And you know what? It's a lot of work, but man, when I say that story and when I think about that story, somehow it makes the entire thing worthwhile. We want to get people involved.
We've talked about how we kind of got to HyperFest. You've talked about the stumblings that you have stumbled into greatness, let's even call it. But tell people what it's like to put on an event that size, because now it's large, and how much time it takes to run to do a HyperFest. Because look, HyperFest is essentially a 3-day event, right? Is that fair? Is that fair to say 3 days?
It's 3 days for the spectators,
Right,
yes.
right. Yeah, that's where we're going with this. So the point is, for 3 days, once a year, how much time, when do you start? I'm afraid to ask. I know the answer to these questions. When do you start trying to kick off next year's show?
We start at that HyperFest,
Yeah.
right? I mean, when we're talking to some of the partners and, going over ideas, fun, goofy stuff, that we can do for the following year. And so a lot of the stuff actually starts then. Now, I mean, I'll be perfectly frank that once that we're done on Sunday night, I have a steak and a golden beverage, and I relax for a couple of days.
Yeah.
And but it starts pretty quickly. And I mean, in this particular case, we had to move it to October because we wanted to kind of get out of the spring with the COVID stuff.
Yeah.
And but we're back in May 14th, so we're only 7 months away. So what normally would take, would give us 11-month planning is now only 6 to 7 months. Which actually I think I really view that as a positive thing. But time-wise, I mean, right now, I start working at 6:30 or 7 o'clock in the morning, and I go to bed at midnight. And I get back up and do it all over. That's for a solid month leading up to the event, pretty much like that. And prior to that, it sort of ebbs and flows. But, I have the regular NASA region, but it's becoming more and more. And it's gotten to the point where we just have to. Laura does a lot. A gentleman by the name of Brian Eggert, who I know you know Brian really well. That poor guy right now, he's a Formula D judge. He was at an event last weekend. He was at Long Beach. This weekend, I'm not even sure where he's flying, but he's got to leave tomorrow, I think, to come back Saturday. And then we have to leave Monday morning to go down to VIR to start setting up for being able to accept the partners and the vendors and everything on Thursday, as well as the NASA racers. So, I can't wait until October 4th.
Yeah, Brian is such a good partner to be with. One, he's super knowledgeable. He's done events for a long time. Two, he certainly knows drifting, right? We got that covered.
Oh, yeah.
And Brian, for those of you listening that don't know, is also the head of US Drift. So, you bring a lot of connections. You also bring a lot of differing background together. So I think being with Brian is certainly a good thing. And he's a good guy.
Oh, there's no question about it. I mean, Brian you cannot find a better person. He's extremely creative. However, sometimes I have to record him so that I can put it on 70% speed so I can actually understand what he's saying sometimes, because he talks so fast, because his brain has got such phenomenal ideas. He gets those things out so quickly. But, he's one of the good guys. He understands the safety side of it. He's been with US Drift forever, and with Formula D, and he likes to have fun.
Yeah.
That's probably the thing that's the coolest thing about working with him is, if it's a bad idea, as long as we can get away with it and it's fun, let's figure out how to do it.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I guess a good segue now that we're recording again is basically so let's talk about COVID for a second. Yeah. I mean, COVID is a real concern for a few reasons. One, as an event promoter, it can potentially be a liability. Two, you obviously don't want to get sick, included yourself and others. And there is a congregation of people from, as you said, all over the world. What up, London?
Who London? Hello, mate.
But, it's been a tough road for events this, in the past year and a half.
Well, I'm from so NASA is a completely different story, right? Because NASA isn't it's not the big public type of thing. It's primarily club level sort of a thing. So that
Right.
that is actually done. Those have done well because after everybody being stuck at home and being able to spend their money on the suspension and getting it fixed and everything else, they're like,
Yeah.
I got to get out of the house and I want to go play with my toys again. So from that perspective, it's actually been very good for us anyway, NASA Mid Atlantic, this year. From the COVID side on HyperFest, we certainly have taken a look at all of the different activities that we do. We've created some precautions. We try to give people as much choice. We don't want to come down heavy-handed on anything, but at the same time, we're fortunate we don't have to, because it's not like we are trying to stuff 40,000 people into an arena for a concert.
Right.
We have 1,300 acres, and if we're looking at this year, let's just say 15,000 attendees, give or take, and there's so much space that's out there that you really just don't run into each other hardly at all. The only place where we have any kind of real gathering is maybe at the burnout contest. Doesn't that last that long? And again, it's still outdoors. But we take precautions. We follow whatever the guidelines are of the Commonwealth of Virginia. Every state has something a little bit different, and we make sure that we're up to code with that, and we let people kind of have fun. We give them the choice. We offer the ride-alongs, and we'll have masks there. If people want to wear a mask, we have head socks and that sort of thing for the helmets. But if people don't want to do it, they don't have to do it. And everybody that is participating, I mean, the one thing about car guys and about racing, we tend to be a lot less risk averse than the general amount of the population.
Right.
We like to go fast. We like to take chances. And I think that general attitude, just sort of flows into it. But as an organizer, like I said, we have 1,300 acres to put 15,000 people on, and we're not as concerned. We do follow the rules though for the state.
Are there other events now that have started to come up, or maybe even as you're like you said, you were before most of these mainstream events now, but as you're evolving, as things are changing, have you ever gone to some other events or look at some of the other things the other events are doing? And I'm not saying grab what they're doing, but is there ever any inspiration that comes from these things where it like says, oh, you know what, it would be cool to do something like this?
Yeah, I mean, certainly I've been to, probably the one that's closest to us is GRIDLIFE.
Yeah.
And they're a little bit different. I would say that's their content on the music side is high.
Yeah.
Our content on anything with a wheel and one location is higher.
Right.
And so, I know Chris. I've talked to Chris. And good guy, and he has some good ideas. And I don't. If somebody has something good, we create so much that to a certain extent, yeah, every once in a while you're like, somebody's copying us. We did tandem drift, right? Or the triple tandem drift at HyperFEST in I think 2015, something like that.
Right.
Next thing you know, somebody else did, triple tandem drift. And but yeah, I mean, I go to other events. I've gone to bigger car shows. I've gone to like mud bogs and tractor pools, and I mean, just really everything that's out there. And I always learn something. There's no question about it. I always learn something, and I'm always thinking about how we can apply that to HyperFEST to make it a little bit more fun.
Well, I just think that's part of the evolution. Like, I always have this problem when people refer to certain things as copying. This is different than, and trends and following trends, and working with what people are looking for and trying to advance your event and make things more exciting. These are things that just come along with being in that sector. It's not something that is going to stay forever. You don't typically have people file, IP and trademark issues against actions that they're taking. I think GRIDLIFE has, like you said, just its own feel. But here's what I'm curious for you, because this is a great question, I think. So with your NASA background and your motorsports focus, when you look at what GRIDLIFE is doing, not as the event, but as the motorsports series, what Chris is doing with motorsports and providing and building that competitive series, how do you feel about it, either constructively or negative, whatever your feelings are, about the series that he's kind of started over the past decade?
You're talking about the actual, like, the road racing part of it, or
the actual racing GRIDLIFE series, not the festivals?
Well, I mean, it's the good thing about it, I believe, is that it's what's the word I'm looking for? It's focused, right? You have one class, and that's it. Now I don't know if they've branched into having a couple of different classes.
Yeah.
But as far as growing the sport, one of the difficulties with road racing in general is that we have 4 billion classes, right? And NASA, it does a really good job to narrow those down as much as possible. And we have very, very competitive racing, and overall we'll have a lot more race cars and a lot more HPE cars at even a regular NASA event than, say, will be at a GRIDLIFE event.
Yeah.
But what Chris does a great job is bringing attention to it, right? And again, I tend to be of the mindset that a rising tide raises all ships, right? So if I've been out there struggling, saying since 2001 to partners and sponsors that really helped make this thing happen. It's like, hey, yeah, this is a really good idea. We can get people on the track, and they're going to buy parts once they start getting into actually getting on the track. So you need to help us do that. 2002, they're like, again, clear taillights. So I said that for 10 or 15 years, before GRIDLIFE started, and the fact that they came out and the market started going that way, that's great. I mean, I think it's good for the market. The series that they are producing, I think that there's some good ideas in there. I think that eventually they'll probably run into what we all do, and that is, and this is with any series, with any racing for the most part, whenever a class gets started, everybody is very enthusiastic, and nobody could ever be cheating, and everybody's brothers, and everybody drinks beers and eats hot dogs. And then you get the one guy who comes in and just kicks everybody's butt. And it's because of the individual either spent a lot of money or whatever, but invariably you run into that, and you run into the challenge of really trying to keep people happy, having fun, and still being safe and fair. And so I think that's probably in the works, just because that is with every sanctioning body. But hey, you know what? If we can get more road racers out there and introduce more people to the sport, great. We're all gonna benefit from that.
I've had the same conversation with other people, obviously, that we all know, and including I think I had this conversation with Chris at SEMA a couple years ago. I find these events to be extremely interesting. I talked to you before about how I thought they were an incredible gateway into motorsport for people. But what's cool about these events, and I think sometimes maybe promoters, and I'm not talking about you, but I'm saying sometimes promoters themselves, they lose sight of this, that events feed off of each other. It took you to start an event 20 plus years ago to build up an event to the point where somebody else could look at it and say, oh, it'd be cool if I could do that and add this. And then it took you guys, everybody's going to feed off of each other. And now the awareness that those enthusiasts have and the excitement that they get from one event allows them to say that they want to go to another one. So all these build-ups help push this thing further and continue to build up the community that we need to make sure these venues and events continues to stay.
Well, it does. I mean, the issue becomes is that if somebody comes to the event and says, hey, this would be great, but it'd be great if we did all this plus this thing. Nobody has any clue unless you're doing it as to what the cost on these things are, and the amount of money and the amount of time and all that kind of stuff that goes into it, right? So the problem is that you get somebody who thinks they know what they're doing, and they go out there and they make a big deal out of it, and they don't necessarily do it right, or it's unsafe, and that sort of thing. We all that's the challenge, right? So yes, I agree with you that the events will feed off each other. An enthusiast goes here, and then they go here, and they go here, and they go here, and they'll make comparisons. But in the end, we're taking somebody who didn't do this and putting them on the track, and I think that that's great.
Absolutely.
What I really don't like is when I see people try something and it's dangerous, or they just don't do it right, or they will take a look at the event from which they gathered inspiration and talk down about the event because it's not how they would do it.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think that happens no matter what type of event, is out there. It doesn't necessarily have to be automotive, but I also agree that automotive, especially when it's racing, really does, you have to put the emphasis on safety before everything else, because it's something that when it goes out of control or goes off the rails, it can do so horribly and catastrophically. So I think that the safety element obviously is important. I think that you and I both have seen countless numbers of events come and go over the last 2 decades, and that won't change. You're always going to have people that are going to think that they can do something better, but the execution of it is the game. It's not about the ideas. It's not about saying, if we could just do this, 1,700 cotton candy machines and this thing would be lit. But it's about, can you have an event that has legs, that you have substance at, that you can pull all the pieces together, advertise it, get people there, keep people safe, keep people happy, get them to return. That's the hard part. And unfortunately, when you look at a lot of these event promoters, I think majority, 75% of the time, the ones that fail, that don't really continue on, they're usually the ones that did it with a motivation for money and not a motivation for the passion of the sport.
Well, I mean, the thing is that they could do it for the money instead of a passion, or they could do it purely for the passion and not have any clue what they're really doing operationally. I mean, what I've seen a lot is people who, and I'll use a car analogy. They see the pretty paint and they want to say, hey, look how good the paint is, but the car's not running very well, or they don't get a good engine under it, and flares and 8-inch wide slicks and really nice paint doesn't mean anything to me if you don't have a smoking hot motor and a good suspension under it. And I think they fail a lot of times because of that. It's more about the show than it is about the substance. And if you're not genuine, the public knows it immediately. Yeah. And I think that's, one of the things that we have been working on more is more of the show aspect, because I tend to be more of the substance type of a person.
Right.
My first race car maybe didn't look the greatest, but it won. And that's because I put all the money I had in that right location. And so you have to do that. You have to provide a good experience for people, especially if you make it if you make it out to be something in your videos and your ads and that sort of thing, it better live up.
Yeah. Well, so listen, I want to give you some accolades because I think one of the best things that you did when you started to really push HyperFest into a bunch of different directions to create that ultimate playground, is that you knew the authenticity. You had road racing and HPDE. You had all that down. You didn't need help, to bring that element of authenticity in. But what you did was when you were bringing in drift, you found guys like Brian Eggert. When you were doing the off-road, you found the Cub. They're from New York, right? When you first started with them?
No, the AK Watley is Chaos
Okay.
to do the off-road stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
Are you talking about rally, or are you talking about like the 4x4?
No, I was talking about the not the rally. The
4x4 stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, for the most part, the 4x4. I mean, we've had a variety of people actually in there from North Carolina to Virginia.
Yep.
But who runs it now is Chaos, Chaos Fab Shop out of Winchester, Virginia. AK Watley, the big Kahuna. He's hilarious, and you get a chance to ride in his killer Raptor. It's awesome. I want one.
Yeah. So anyhow, what I was saying is, I think that the fact that you could push authenticity in so that when people got to the event, they had a real experience of that segment. Because there's a lot of other events that have tried to pool different forms and segments together, but they try to do it themselves because they're not going to outsource, and they don't really know that segment. So when you experience it, it's just not there.
Well, I learned a long time ago that I don't know everything, and I continue to learn that I know less and less. And the one thing absolutely that I did learn is that take the most enthusiastic person and put them in that position, because you can guide a very enthusiastic position or person, but you can't teach enthusiasm. And so Brian loves drifting. I like drifting. It's cool. I'm a road race guy. That's where my discipline is. I come from that background, but I love drifting. I mean, I think it's fun. I mean, I like doing it personally. Same thing with the off-road side. And we have such a great team. I mean, Brian does the drifting stuff. Of course, my whole team does the road racing side. A woman by the name of Amanda Skelly is, you may know Amanda. She a rally girl. She does a lot of rally stuff. She handles all the rally side. She's great. And AK Watley is handling the off-road side. His whole team is phenomenal. I'm sure you know the company Blip Shift.
Mm-hmm.
Blip Shift. Kelsey Hill is she's just wonderful, and she handles and helps us with a lot of marketing. But yeah, you got to be genuine. I mean, if we tried to say, I've done it. I've gone to SEMA and gone up to try to have some, find some partners for the off-road side, and I don't speak the language, and they know it, so I walk around with AK and go, and I learn, and I shut up and I learn, and I'll never learn as much as him, but it's you find guys and you try to find out who's genuine, and I've gotten that I have to say I've gotten pretty good at is sniffing out the poo.
Do you have sort of a vision or a hope where this event will go over the next few years, 5 years? Or do you kind of just say, look, I'm committed to doing my event, and as it changes, it changes, and that's how we're going to do it?
So I think right now on the content side, this is one of the discussions we've had, man. We have a lot of stuff going on. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on, and I don't think we necessarily need any more stuff. What I really want to see happen is I want that, I want for the partners to be able to look at this as an open playground. Because number one, VIR is awesome to deal with. Okay. They are not a corporate track. They're independently owned by enthusiasts, and they get it. And just like me, their first answer is yes, unless the logistics make us say no. And so what I really want is I want I would like to see more interactions with the partners, with the corporations, with the manufacturers, to be able to fund some of the really fun stuff, that Brian and I have talked about for years, that just right now, it's bigger money, and we have to take this step, step at a time. So the way I sort of see it in the future, I see, I'd like to see, 30, 40,000 spectators, out there camping and having a good time. I'd like to see an expansion of HyperFest to maybe another track, which we have been talking about for a little while, to someplace else in the country, trying to figure out where we're going to do that. And that's, and really, I'd like it to get to the point where it's big enough that I can have a full-time staff, because right now everybody's sort of part-time, have a full-time staff putting this together, and just really try to continue the vision of, I love the sport, and I just wanted to introduce people to it. And that's it. I just want to do more of that. I want more road racing. I'd like to see road racing get to the point where it was when IMSA was in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
That's when I grew up, man. That's when I saw, the GTP cars, the Nissan 83 car, all of that. That's such cool stuff. Lowenbrow car. That stuff was just so cool to me. The 935 Porsches, Hurley Hay with those guys, man, that stuff was just so cool. And I would like for it to get to be that way at some point. IMSA, I think the current IMSA, they're doing a good job. It is so out of reach, though, for everybody.
Yeah.
A TCR car, to campaign a TCR car, is $500,000. That's not the fastest class out there.
Right.
And so, there is a spot. The regular person has to be able to have an opportunity to go do this. And part of the reason I did HyperFest, honestly, was because I knew that unless I somehow was able to, I got lucky, I was probably never going to race pro. I've won 3 national championships in a very tough class, but talent doesn't mean anything. It's a matter of the money that you put behind it. And the coolest thing to me, or one of the coolest things to me about HyperFest, is that a bunch of my brethren, my brothers in speed that are out there that are never going to have the financial means to go pro, get a chance to run in front of a crowd, and get that feeling of, and that energy that comes from that, at least once a year.
Yeah.
And maybe twice if we can find another venue.
Well, that would be exciting. Listen, before we get done with this, I want to say thank you, I guess, to you, because you're doing exactly what I wish I could do. Not the event planning. I don't really want to do that at all. But you allow this gateway to bring people into our sport, a sport that, just like you, I love a whole bunch. I mean, listen, there's nobody that works in automotive for the money. I'll tell you that right now. I don't know if we don't do this for the money, but and for people that watch along or follow along, whatever, you'll know, I say this all the time. It's so important that people not bash each other to pieces and continue to support other car enthusiasts, because there's so many organizations and different types of things that are trying to stop it from happening. And we all have to be in the same fight. And the fight is to continue to push the sport forward and allow people to experience it. And, look, somebody has something wrong with a car, to help them. Something, to hold all these secrets, it doesn't do anything. And now you got the internet. It tells everybody anything anyway.
Well, and I think it's fair to say also that it's good to have someone like yourself leading an event like HyperFest, because not a lot of people like to listen, and learn, and you do that by allowing, a lot of these grassroots people, like, for instance, Brian, go, with the U.S. Drift, and having him help you out in the event. It's a big deal for, people coming in, because, like, we need that. We need a doorway, like he said. And if it wasn't for HyperFest, a lot of these things would probably die off or go a different direction. So HyperFest definitely helps out those people that need an introduction. And just like Scott said, we're thankful for people like yourself
Well,
who listen, who open the doors, and don't just say it's my way or the highway.
Well, I appreciate that, gentlemen. I really do, and I appreciate the acknowledgement and the appreciation. Uh, you know, HyperFest is what it is because the enthusiasts are the one who put it together. It is, it's by the enthusiast for the enthusiast, and it's I I never ever want to get to the point where I'm cold. I don't want to ever get to the point where I'm cold about it. And honestly, I don't know that I'll ever get cold because I've loved cars since I've been a kid, and yeah, you get jaded. I mean, when you put these things on, the amount of stress that goes into it, you have to guard against being jaded. But in the end, I mean, I talked to a guy today, and he just had a general question about the event. I always ask everybody, how'd you hear about the event? Have you ever been? And he's like, yeah, man. He goes, I was there in 2019, and I was so bummed when you guys canceled it in 2020. I'm like, yeah, me too. And and he just sat there, and he's like, yeah, and I did this and I did that, and it was just so much fun, and it's the best event, and the people are so friendly, and VIR is so cool, and he was genuinely, it's it's like I was talking to somebody who had been lost for a while and found a home. And that feeling I found the first time I went to my very first track event. I wasn't driving it, I was watching a friend of mine's dad race, and realized that, wow, this is within reach. It's not MC. I don't have to have millions of dollars to go do this. This is within reach. And yeah, there's something, man. There's something to that. I mean, there's it's you measure a man's the value of his life in the relationships that he has. And I'm the last of 6 kids. I love a big family. When we all get together, it's Christmas or Thanksgiving. It's just bonkers. And that's kind of how I look at HyperFest, man. It's just I have my family help puts it on for the big family who comes out to play.
Yeah, that's awesome. Chris, give the dates of HyperFest so that we can have them here. And we'll put all the HyperFest information in the description on everything. But give the dates for anybody that's watching.
So October 1st through the 3rd. Yep. So people will be rolling in 1 week from today.
Yes. What about next year? In May, have you set those dates?
Yeah, it's going to be May 13th through the 15th.
And that will still be a VIR?
Still be at VIR.
Good.
Yep.
Yo, Chris, just curious, after 25 years, he said, right?
Yeah.
We'll give it 20 years of HyperFest?
Yeah. What gets you excited? Like, what are you looking forward to next week?
I'm looking forward to Sunday night. I'm looking for the steak. That's exactly right. Now, I'll tell you what, it's I'm honestly looking for the end. But my son races. For the first time ever, we're going to do night racing. And he has been driving me crazy for like 3 years. Dad, we got to go to run night race. Like, okay, finally. So we put the whole thing together. Company by the name of Flagger, which is really cool product where you can actually communicate with the driver inside the car from the corner station. And it'll tell you, whether it's a double yellow, that sort of thing. Anyway, they've tossed in to really help the night race, and it gets me excited to watch my son, play, and it's an experience joy at this thing that's racing. I mean, he's really very good. He holds the track record at Summit Point in Spec E30, and that enthusiasm. That's what I look forward to the most, man. I have to say that when I get there, and I drive the golf cart around, I'll be by myself and I'll see somebody walking along, and I'll say, hey, you guys need a ride, and try to give them a ride wherever they're going. And I don't tell them who I am. I mean, I have an official shirt on, but I just am curious, and I'll just say, yeah. So what are you guys thinking? You have fun? What do you like the most? That sort of thing, and try to get good, candid information from them. And and almost every time I do that, man, people are just like, I just can't believe all this is here in one spot. Yeah. And that motivates me, because I can tell you, at about 12 o'clock every night, I'm like, this is the last year I'm doing this. And by the time it hits Sunday night, I'm like, all right, let's do this again. I got some good ideas.
Man, well, Chris, I thank you for your time, and I also wish you a lot of success next weekend. We've been saying this for years, and then COVID. I want you to know, Chris, that you and HyperFest were on our schedule, and then the world collapsed.
It's true. It's true.
I don't know, man.
Yeah,
it's like
true.
You're like Lucy in the football. You know what I mean?
No.
And I'm Charlie Brown.
Well, so here's what happened. Listen, Charlie. What I'm saying is that there was a number of years that, it just was too tough for me to get out to certain events. Then we had a couple of years where they were always on the same dates as other events where I had no staff. So we finally got to a point where we have enough people here that even if I couldn't make it out, we could go. And
mind you, he's my boss, so I talk to him, it's like kind of like hey, at the beginning of the year, I'm like, okay, so these are the events that I want to go to. GRIDLIFE, HyperFEST, and he's like, all right, we're going to do it. And then obviously 2020 hit and it didn't work out. But trust me, it was on the schedule. I nag him all day, every day about it.
Well, so we're gonna get there. That's what's gonna happen. But so May, we gotta get it back on the thing. But
you heard it here first.
Yeah.
You're on camera now.
Listen, I'm telling you, it was on the schedule. But I wish you a lot of luck in just a week, and I hope you guys have a super successful event. And try not to pick anybody up in the golf cart and take them to the playground.
I'll do my best. All right, gentlemen.
All right.
Hey,
thanks so much, Chris.
Great to talk to you guys. Thank you very much. Look forward to seeing you in May.
It's gonna happen.
I believe you, mostly.
It's gonna happen. It's not Memorial Day weekend, is it?
No. It's like 2 weeks before Memorial Day.
Perfect. All right.
It is. There you go.
Good. So anyhow, that was it. I had a good time with that one. I've known Chris for, it's got to be over 15 years. And I think one of the best parts about knowing Chris and kind of watching what he's done is the fact that I legitimately have had the opportunity to watch that event unfold and change and do some interesting things. So that's a pretty cool piece. So that's it. Let's get out of here.
Yeah,
we're out of here.
Yeah, bye guys.
Enough of this. All right.
I'm tired of spending time with you.
Don't let this man speak to you like that.
Playing.
Listen, we will be back here next week, every Wednesday, 3 p.m. Eastern, over on YouTube if you're listening on iTunes, Google Play, and all that good stuff. We have a piece of content dropping on Friday on the YouTube channel. Make sure you check that out.
Yep.
And we always go live on Instagram and Facebook, 2 p.m. Wednesdays. Join us. Catch you later.
Peace out, Mike.